All right, so I don't know how in-depth I'm going to get with these playoff quote-unquote previews because these series are actively happening. As I'm recording this, game 1 of the Nets and Pacers just happened, and game 2 of the T-Wolves and Nuggets very literally just ended like 5 seconds ago. So I'm dealing with a little bit of information, but I promise most of this I wrote before these games took place. We'll go in order. So the thing I like the most about the Knicks and Pacers series is it's the ultimate styles makes fights type of series, and I love those types. The name of this game, this series, the biggest key is going to be pace. And pace is defined as possessions per 48 minutes. There's an actual metric for this, so we're not just guessing. The Pacers were the second fastest team in basketball this year at 100.2.16 possessions per 48 minutes. The slowest team in the league were the New York Knicks at 95.96 possessions per 48 minutes. The halfway point between that is 99.06. And I'm willing to bet for every game this series, whichever way that pace number goes is going to decide who wins the game. If it's under 99.06, the Knicks will win. If it's over 99.06, the Pacers will win. As I said, I wrote that before game 1. The pace for game 1, 98.00. The Knicks won. And the reason why the pace is so important is because the Knicks, for the most part, really only plays 6 or 7 guys. And more than likely 6, and their goal is to beat the other team up. And I feel like we're going to know how most of these games are going to go either in the middle of the second quarter, or if the game is closer and we start to see the Knicks die down towards the end of the fourth, if they are able to keep pace. If you got these players playing all these minutes, towards the end of the game, eventually they're going to have to die down. They're in great conditioning, but they're still human. Like Josh Hart didn't leave the floor last game. He played all 48 minutes. Dante DiVincenzo played 44. Jalen Brunson played 43.5. Speaking of Jalen Brunson, there's not a single person happier in the world to be playing a different team this round. Imagine going from playing Philly, whose whole goal, Nick Nurse and them, with the typical Nick Nurse game plan, good at basketball, get them, not to mention Joel Embiid in the paint, ready to swat things away, playing against a significantly less physical team with the Pacers, who arguably are the worst defensive team left in the playoffs right now. Of course, Jalen Brunson went for 43 points on 53% shooting the first game. Of course he did. The Knicks made the Pacers play their game, and the Pacers are not equipped to play that game. They don't have the facilities for that. I'm also not sure how sustainable this is going to be for the Knicks for an entire series, especially if at some point Tyrese Halliburton decides he wants to join the series. I know you're hurt. I know your hamstring hasn't been the same all year long. 6 total points on 6 total shot attempts is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable, especially for an all-NBA guy. Come on now, what are we doing? But if the Pacers can turn up the pace and make the Knicks pay for playing all those starters, all those minutes, because the Pacers bench was able to outscore the Knicks 46-3, and the Knicks still had to make a late game push just to win that game by 4. So the chances of this series turning around on its head, especially once it gets back to Indiana, are pretty high. If I had to say who would win this series, it would have to be either the Pacers win it in 6, which would mean they have to win game 2, which will be happening when this podcast releases, or the Knicks win in 7, because I just don't think the Pacers can win a game 7 at MSG. I don't know who's walking into MSG and winning a game 7. I don't think anyone can do that. And all of that is contingent upon Tyrese Halliburton getting his head out of his ass and deciding he wants to be an all-NBA player again. And I don't think he has the facilities for that. So give me the Knicks for the rest of this series. Timberwolves versus the Nuggets, and oh my God. Oh my God. Again, this game just ended, so the analysis may not be as deep on this one, but just bear with me. I went into Monday's game thinking, all right, the T-Wolves already got their game on the road. No Gobert tonight. The defending champions surely are going to even the series going back to Minnesota, right? Right? Nope. How about the T-Wolves win by 26? One of the biggest reasons why I went into this series thinking the Nuggets were going to win it, and I still think the Nuggets are going to win it, just to be clear, but I thought the Nuggets would dominate and possibly win in 5 because Karl Anthony Towns plays for the Timberwolves. And I just knew that Nikola Jokic was going to get him to foul out every single game. But even in game 1, when he was in foul trouble, he had, I think, 5 fouls, had to sit with about 6 minutes left in the fourth. Naz Reid came in and on both ends of the floor, lost his damn mind, so it didn't matter. Karl Anthony Towns came out in game 2, put in 27 points, 14 boards, and made his presence felt on the other end of the floor. And if you're telling me you're going to get 2 more games from that from Karl Anthony Towns, then, hey, bruh, all bets are off. You look at the Nuggets, And they haven't even been down in a series since they lost to the Warriors in 2022. I would love to do the whole championship DNA. They know how to win. But if we really remember their playoff run last year, the Nuggets were so much better than everybody, they never really struggled. Yeah, they lost a couple games here and there, but those games were contingent upon Devin Booker and Kevin Durant going absolutely ballistic for a couple games there. An incredible Eric Spoelstra coaching performance, and that was about it. So they had that much of an advantage last year. That is not the case this year, especially with the way the Timberwolves are able to play defense. They are their equal, if not better, because they have a player who genuinely believes he is the best player, not only in this series, in the world, in Anthony Edwards. I know we've been waiting for me to get to Anthony Edwards. That is a man on a mission. I really wish y'all would relax with the Kobe Bryant, face of the league, Michael Jordan comparisons, partially because I'm a Celtics Tatum guy, and I think it's disrespectful how y'all passing over my guy. We'll get there shortly. But the other half is, can we let the 22-year-old get to a conference finals first before we compare him to some of the greatest players ever? Thank you. But walking into the defending champion's house, putting up 43 to take game one is ridiculous. Oh my God, what a performance. And now they're in a situation where they can split at home. They only got to win one of the next two, and they are up 3-1 or 3-0 at some point. No one could have seen this coming. If I had to bet between the Timberwolves being up 3-0 by the time a lot of you hear this podcast, and the series being 3-3 and we're looking at a game 7 by the time I make my next one, I'm going to go on game 7. And I hope it's game 7 because, dear God, I'll gladly take 5 more games of this series, please. At some point, the Nuggets are going to be able to come back into this. And I know the Jokic defenders and the Jokic hive are like, why do y'all keep saying that Jokic is having bad games? Look at his numbers, look at his numbers, look at his numbers. Guys, when we say Jokic is having bad games, we're talking about turnovers and efficiency. And if you're a real Jokic stan, you of all people should know his efficiency and his turnovers are not what we are used to seeing right now. Right now for Jokic, we're looking at 11 total turnovers in 2 games, shooting 20% from 3 and shooting about 42% from the field in total. This is not the Jokic we're used to seeing. And also, if Jamal Murray is legitimately hurt and is not going to be the Jamal Murray we're used to seeing, who is able to close out these games and not get roasted by Anthony Edwards on the other end of the court, by the way, that would also be helpful, then the Nuggets are in trouble. If anything, if they can steal game 3, sit Jamal Murray's ass down for game 4 and worry about the rest of it later, because it looks like he's not going to get healthy at some point. Unless he sits down, because this is not the Jamal Murray we're used to seeing. He's clearly a diminished version of himself. But I'm hoping and praying, as should the rest of you, that this series is going to go 7 games. Gotta wait for these Tuesday games to actually happen so I could talk about those series. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll talk about that. Hello from the future. It is now tomorrow, and the Celtics, Cavaliers, and the Mavericks versus the OKC Thunder just happened. So I'm going to go ahead and break down game 1 of both those series and preview the rest of them. Starting off with Celtics, Cavs, and game 1 went about the way I expected it to go, with the Celtics putting the belt to the ass to the Cavaliers. So some of my pregame notes I had was Donovan Mitchell, we don't give him enough credit for being an outstanding playoff performer pretty much from the second he stepped foot in the NBA. On those Jazz teams from his rookie year, not only was he the number 1 option, for most of those series, he was the only option because Joe Ingles and Rudy Gobert weren't going to score 30 points if he didn't. And on this Cavaliers team, it has been no different. 33 points for Mitchell this game. Second highest total is Evan Mobley with 17. Funny enough, to highlight how great of a performer that Donovan Mitchell was, he had 33 points and 6 assists for the Cavs. He's the 4th player in league history to score 30 or more points in 6 straight playoff series openers, joining Michael Jordan, who did it 3 times, Kobe Bryant, and Wilt Chamberlain. So some pretty damn good company there. With that said, last series he went to game 7 and his team only averaged 95.9 points a game against a team full of a bunch of babies. With all due respect to the Orlando Magic, I mean babies age-wise, not mentality-wise, which is how I knew that they just weren't going to have the firepower to keep up with the Celtics on a game-by-game basis. And game 1 showed exactly what we thought it would be, with the Celtics coming out and beating them 120-95 in a game that honestly was never close. It's only tied twice, lead only changed twice, and then for the rest of the game, the Celtics just held a steady lead. The average margin of victory for the Celtics since dropping game 2 to Miami because Miami had a historically great shooting night all of a sudden has been plus 22.8 points. So they have not only been winning, they have been beating the dog shit out of every single team that has stepped in front of them, which has only been 2 teams. But every time they stepped on the court, they've been winning these games by a lot, is the point I'm trying to prove. Apologies, it's 1 in the damn morning, so I'm gathering my thoughts. And I would love to say that series over, 3 more games, and let's get ready for whoever wins the Knicks Pacers. But if you've listened to this podcast before, you know how I feel about my Celtics being unserious. So the following is going to be a nitpick for someone who's only thinking about the finals when it comes to this team. Almost everybody seems to acknowledge the variety of offensive options that are on the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are just such a deep team, all this talent, and everyone seems to know it, with the exception of Jayson Christopher Tatum. And I just don't know why. Game 1 is an example of kind of what's been going on all playoffs long. Sneakily, we've been winning, so I haven't made a big deal of it. But it is worth noting once we start getting to some harder matchups, Tatum, for whatever reason, shooting-wise, he's been off. But he still leads the team in shot attempts for whatever reason. Essentially had the same usage rate as Jaylen Brown, who it was his night. Let me tell you, 32 points tonight, 15 of them coming in the first quarter. Way to go, JB. Love when you come out the game swinging. But at the same time, I get it. Anthony Edwards is cooking right now. Jalen Brunson is carrying his team. The crown for best American player that is rightfully Jayson Tatum's appears to be up for grabs right now. I feel it. But, Jayson, you don't have to live like this no more. You've done the whole putting up big numbers and knocking off old guard players. Like when they gave Anthony Edwards credit for sweeping KD's team out the first round, I laughed because Jayson Tatum and the gang did that 2 years ago. Oh my God, he scored 40 points with his season on the line. Hey, can I remind you of Game 6 against the reigning NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks with our season on the line? Jayson Tatum going for 46. Remember that one? 51, Game 7. Series on the line literally a year ago against the Sixers? No? Just me? Okay. And there's a reason why all these fan bases use Jayson Tatum as the measuring stick for their stars. And every time they start balling, what do you hear them say? Oh, such and such is better than Jayson Tatum, whether it's Anthony Edwards, Brunson, SGA, you name it. Because deep in their psyche, they know who the man is. They know who the top dog is. But we don't need that right now. We don't need it right now. Go ahead, come up off that pill. Let Derek White cook. Let JB cook. We're paying him $1 gajillion. Derek White didn't shave his head for no reason. Don't make him do it in vain. And come June, when the Celtics are lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy and you can walk into the Paris Olympics as the champion, no one's going to care that you didn't take as many shots as you wanted to Game 3 of the second round of the playoffs. Who cares? Okay, now for the rest of the series. Much like every Celtics series until more than likely the finals, it's not about skill. It's not about talent. It's about focus and seriousness. Can the Boston Celtics be the best version of themselves for 48 minutes for 4 games in a row? I believe that they'll be able to do so this series. I got faith in my guys. I do. I'm back believing, even though y'all just heard me bitch and complain for the past however long this is going to end up being after I edit it. I'm thinking this series is over. Call it a sweep. There's games every other day. So more than likely, by the time I record my next podcast, this series will already be over. And we'll be waiting for whoever wins Pacers Knicks. Can't wait. Next up, we got Mavericks Thunder. And unfortunately, a lot of the stats that I like to use are not available because the game just ended, and that is annoying as hell. So no advanced stats. So thankfully, I took some notes during the game, which I never do, but I love y'all, so of course I did it. Pre-game notes. This series is going to put my young nigga syndrome to the test because I genuinely believe it is almost impossible to make a deep playoff run if you've never done it before. And considering OKC is the second youngest team in the league, they've never done this before. They just won their first playoff series. And you could tell me that Luka and Kyrie are the best 2 players in this series. SGA would strongly disagree. Everybody in Oklahoma would strongly disagree. And I might tend to agree with them. But for OKC to win this series, Jalen Williams got to eat his Wheaties. That 21.3 a game that he got last series in 4, that's cool, but we got to take it up a level if we're going to compete with the best of Luka and Kyrie. We got to make those Kawhi comparisons jump a level and really become reality. But sure enough, we come out game 1, SGA outscored Luka and Kyrie by himself in the first half. He had 19, they had 18. Granted, Luka hurt his knee halfway through the first quarter and did not look like the same player for the rest of the game. I'm waiting on the injury update for that. It does not look like we're getting that anytime soon. But I'm not just going to blame it on the injury. OKC's defense played out of their mind, and their home crowd absolutely loved it. There's certain teams that I'm happy are good again. The Knicks are in this category. The Cavs are in this category because we forgot just how great these home crowds are. OKC's home crowd is fantastic. And I haven't seen them go crazy the way they do for this defense since Russell Westbrook was there and he was cooking. It's that level in there. And it shouldn't be a shock to us that the defense looked that good because they were fourth in defensive rating this year. And for y'all that don't know what defensive rating means, it's just points per 100 possession. They were at 108.2, 108.4, somewhere in that range. And then to bring back Jalen Williams, so he went to the locker room middle of the third quarter, and I got concerned. I'm like, all right, the rest of the team's playing really well. They're hitting a bunch of shots they typically don't hit. So I'm thinking, all right, shit, he goes to the locker room. He's out for the rest of the game. Who knows how this fourth quarter is going to go? Apparently, he just went to the locker room to eat Popeye spinach because he came back out in the fourth, went 4 for 4, 10 points, allowed 10 points, and OKC just pulled away. Last point I want to make about OKC before I end this podcast. A lot of you were telling on yourselves that you have never seen OKC play before, specifically Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I enjoyed watching it the entire time. I'm seeing tweets like, damn, SGA gets every single call. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, he does. I'm sorry you're just now figuring this out. I even saw somebody say Lou Dort plays really good defense, and I was like, okay. All right. Let me go ahead and close this app because y'all don't know what's going on. But for the rest of this series, because I don't think every game is going to look this bad. I like OKC for the rest of the series, maybe in 6, but I don't think it's going to look this bad. Obviously, if you're Dallas, you can't turn the ball over that much. But the real thing is, I just want to see Kyrie get involved earlier. Like, he had about 8 points in the first half and then tried to go crazy later in the game. But I don't think that's sustainable for the rest of the series. You can't wait to take over this game. That worked against the Clippers. That's not going to work against this OKC team. They're too good. And if they get into a rhythm defensively, it's going to be too little too late. All right, that about concludes today's podcast. I got to hurry up and edit this so y'all can actually hear it in the morning. So I've been Kev BK, beloved. Go ahead, like, follow, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, and I'll catch y'all next week.